The NFL has given us so many great running backs and legends. Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, and LT, and so many others. My question is, what's the greatest RB era we've ever seen? What decade had the best group of running backs at one time? For me, there's no debate. The one era that stands out, that's the 90s. A few eras showcase the dominance of the running back position. The 80s with Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen, Earl Campbell. 2000s with LT, AP, Ahmad Green, and Sean Alexander. But to me, there's one era that stands out. The 90s, a decade filled with power, speed, and legends who redefined the game. Let's start off with Barry Sanders. Barry was pure magic on the field with unmatched agility, vision, and elusiveness. He turned every play into a highlight reel. Retiring at the peak of his game, he left us all wondering what more he could have achieved. Consistently putting up 1,500 yards, 2,000-yard rusher, just under Emmitt in rushing yards with 13,799 yards and 85 touchdowns in this decade. He averaged 100 yards a game. 97 was legendary. That was his best year. 2,000 yards and 11 touchdowns and averaged 6 yards per carry. Emmitt Smith, the workhorse of America's team, set records that still stand today. The all-time leading rusher, a 3-time Super Bowl champion and MVP, led the position in rushing yards and touchdowns. His best season was 1995, 1,700 yards and 25 touchdowns. In 94 and 96, he combined for 46 touchdowns, almost 14,000 yards and almost 150 total touchdowns in the 90s. Almost 14,000 yards and almost 150 total touchdowns. He was the MVP, the most valuable player for those Cowboys teams. An all-time great, Emmitt Smith. Marshall Faulk wasn't just a running back, he was a game changer. His ability to run, catch, and dominate in all phases of the game set the stage for the modern dual threat back. Marshall came in 94 for the Colts, and he dominated as a rookie. 1,700 yards total, 12 touchdowns. He got traded to the Rams in 99, and in his first year, he did something only that has happened once before. 1,000 yards rushing and receiving. Was a part of one of the best offenses we've ever seen with a great nickname, the greatest show on turf. Terrell Davis, TD, proved when the stakes were highest, he was unstoppable. A league MVP and a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He defined the concept of clutch running. Came in 95 and had a great 4-year stretch in the 90s before injuries. Another 2K runner, 2,000 yards and 23 total touchdowns that season. 60,000 yards and 58 touchdowns in a 5-year span. When TD played in the Super Bowl, he dominated. 55 carries, 259 yards, and 3 touchdowns. At TD's peak, not many running backs were better and more clutch than him. And we got Thurman Thomas, a key piece for the Buffalo Bills. 4 Super Bowl runs, 3rd in rushing in the decade with 9,800 yards and 57 touchdowns. Was a dual threat too. In 91 and 92, he combined for 2,000 yards and 3rd most receiving yards by a running back in that decade. First Super Bowl, he had 135 yards rushing and 55 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Thurman Thomas was a beast back then. The other great running backs during this era, Curtis Martin. was as consistent as it came in this decade. Played with the Patriots in his first 3 years, 3,800 yards and 32 touchdowns. 98, he signed with the Jets, and in the 2 years left in the decade, 2,700 yards and 13 touchdowns. Jerome Bettis, the bus, he was bulldozing defenders in this decade. Fifth in rushing yards and 41 touchdowns. The bus was rolling in 96. He put up 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. The Steelers legend, Jerome Bettis. Then Eddie George. Eddie was super competitive. Eddie and Ray Lewis rivalry is one of the greatest of all time. He had 5,000 yards in the decade with 28 touchdowns. He averaged 1,300 yards in the 90s. You got to give Eddie George props, too. Another great running back was Ricky Watters. Ricky was fourth in the decade in rushing. Played for the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Seahawks. And for all three teams, he played really well for him. His best season was 96. He had 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. As the decade was finishing up, he reached a little under 10,000 yards rushing and 70 touchdowns. In the 95 Super Bowl, he had 3 touchdowns that game. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler. Many argue he should be in the Hall of Fame, but he's not. Ricky Watters was really good in a decade that had some great running backs. So you have to mention Ricky Watters. And the 90s had it all: power, finesse, and unforgettable moments. It was an era where the running back was king. The numbers don't lie. No other decade combined talent, longevity, and impact like the 90s. The 90s is the greatest running back era in NFL history. Do you agree? All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And please comment down what you think. Do you think the 90s was the best, or you think a different decade was better? Please comment down. And also, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you're new here or you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Please subscribe, guys. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.